Okay, evening everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is good and coming to you from a Thursday night for once. So apologies for, I suppose it is a bit of a short notice change. It didn't actually have anything to do with me, although I probably wasn't fit on Tuesday night to give a presentation. But obviously with Simon doing his trading pub instead of on a Thursday, on a Tuesday afternoon, it didn't really seem much point in me just jumping on only a couple of hours later. So we've kind of switched it up. And I appreciate, people may not be around on Thursday night, but that's why we record them. And that's why you can just watch the stream back either via the Vimeo link or indeed just across on the channel. Been a bit of an interesting week. Obviously, Bitcoin's done very well. And more importantly, our little baby, BitTensor, has also done well over the last, 10 days, really, 9-10 days. When I last spoke to you guys, I think Bitcoin was around about 88,000, and it hasn't really seen a pullback. It's just climbed up just about at 97,000. We're just under it at the moment. We'll have a look at sort of what that could mean. But whilst I don't really want to go into too much of the news kind of stuff, because I've not really been following anything for the last week, I just want to sort of really kind of feel, are we now back on track? We've had a pullback. Is this now the setting of a nice little, post-correction recovery, and the bull market is just back on? Because it wasn't so long ago there was an immense amount of fear in the market, and we seem to be moving away from that. So that's where we're going to go tonight. I didn't get any questions on the Q&A sheet beforehand. I have had a couple in Discord which we'll go over, but as always, if you've got anything in that you want to talk about, just drop it in the chat and I'll get through it. Hey there, Mo. Yeah, thanks. Yep, so for those that aren't aware, I'm sure most of you actually are, I foolishly signed up and ran the London Marathon on Sunday. It was tough. The heat was unbearable. And I didn't get the time that I actually was looking for. I finished it in 4 hours and 42, which, although I'm happy on the day with the conditions, I was actually training for a sub 4 hours, but with the heat, severe cramps after the sort of completing the first half and getting over Tower Bridge, because I foolishly went and dropped out of my pocket a lot of my gels, which obviously give you electrolytes, which then help replace the salt which you sweat. Didn't have any of those in the end. And so it was a bit of a bugger's muddle. And I just decided to change it up, not push the time, and just have a bit of fun. And so it meant I got to hang out with the family when I saw them. I even stopped for an ice cream partway through, which I did not expect that to happen. But needs must in all that heat. But ultimately, yep, it's here by my side because I'm not leaving it for now. That's what it was for, was the winner's medal. Winner to me. Finisher's medal. It's done. I've got the bug. I'm going to do another one. But let's get into crypto and let's see where we are. Actually, before we do, for everyone that offered support, everyone that donated, thank you very much for all of that. I managed to raise about £3,250-ish for the Royal British Legion, which was just amazing. And trust me, those kind of things, they really keep you going when you just want to give up. But yeah, so thank you to everyone for that. But let's talk about crypto and let's have a look at how our investments are doing at the moment. Anita, I have seen your message. I will get to that in a moment. So, Bitcoin, the standard charts that we've looked at for pretty better part of years at the moment. 3-day time frame on the top with Bitcoin in the moment. You can kind of see those previous lines that we have had on here for months. These are not ones that I just drew today because they look pretty. Are really sort of helping to play out at the moment. And we've got that double bottom. I'm going to draw it, but if you can't see it, you need your eyes checking. Down here, which is quite nice. W formation. Double bottom, there was the waistline. We busted through the waistline. Not only that, we then cleared above it, went through this level, and we've kind of completed this double bottom. Depending on this 3-day candle close at the moment, that distance up to this top line at 95,000 is the double bottom playing out. And so whilst we'll talk about a little bit later on that potentially there may be some minor corrections just to, see the balance in the market, we've actually had a very strong reaction from the shenanigans that we had in the early part of March and I suppose the beginning part of April as well, really. But good, strong action there. Over on the left-hand side, which I always wonder if you can actually see because my head's in the way. Bitcoin dominance chart here. And this is the thing that I find quite fascinating, I suppose, because Bitcoin dominance is still continuing to climb. We actually haven't seen that reallocation yet. But when you actually look at some of the top 10, top 20, maybe even as high as top 30 altcoins, vast majority of them are actually outperforming Bitcoin. So I think there is a little bit of an alt season to be considered, but instead of it being the micro caps in which people are just throwing money at a dartboard hoping something stick, I think there's probably some nervousness within altcoins at the moment. And actually what we're seeing is that some of the more robust or sustained or I don't know, well-backed projects, altcoins, are doing well. BitTensor being one of them. You'll have a look on CoinMarketCap in a moment, but it's up over 50% in the last sort of 30 days, which is fantastic. I mean, even Ethereum started to make some move, which is a bit of a miracle, to be honest. But the fact of the matter is that, seen as Bitcoin dominance is still on the rise, I still actually have my Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about sort of Bitcoin plays. I am considering actually starting to sort of sell some of my Bitcoin into other assets, predominantly Tau. But I'm just waiting to see how that goes. But we haven't seen that sharp drop off, and we know it really is alt season time. But Bitcoin's still looking strong from where that is looking. And we've got to be realistic. That might just be a sign of things to come for the rest of the season. We don't know how that's going to impact with the likes of ETFs and just institutional whales just not really interested in anything but Bitcoin there. And again, when we have a look here on the 3-day time frame with this, so this is total 3. And 3-day time frame, as I said before, obviously we've had that drop away, which we can expect. We were expecting the drop. Well, sorry, we know the drop's going to happen because the whole of the market crapped itself when the tariffs were announced. But what we actually haven't seen is, unlike Bitcoin, where I talked about that double bottom, not only playing out, getting above the waistline and going all the way up to where you'd expect it to, on total 3, we actually can't even clear the waistline at the moment. And I think that's a telling sign of just why Bitcoin dominance is doing so well compared to the rest of the market. Now, we're very fortunate in how we're positioned because majority of us are very heavily invested in Tau, and that has been one of the altcoins that has done well. But there are others that must be lagging behind because this is the altcoin market, with the exception of Bitcoin and Ethereum, although Bitcoin obviously isn't an altcoin. And then we've got BitTensor, and BitTensor, has just been doing very well. Last time I was on 10 days ago, it was on a rip, and then we were around about just under 300. It's continued to get there at the moment. We are running into some areas of resistance, which we'll look at a little bit later on. I do think we are probably a little bit overextended. That's just my honest opinion there. We've gone from effectively 160 to 380, over double, 2.5 times, without any kind of sense of a real pullback. So when we have a look at it against fibs and EMAs and other price levels, I'm going to give some areas where I think we might get a pullback. I think it's realistic to expect that one. It's not necessarily to worry. So we can have a look at levels of, where if it breaches, we might need to be concerned. But a great strong move from BitTensor there. And one of the things I have been seeing is it is quite heavily talked about again, probably because of how well it has been doing. Someone's asked me again about subnets later. I don't personally think subnets is what is driving this price action. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Nito, I will answer your question. I'm just going to save it for when we get in, I promise you. The only bit of news, and it's not news that I've actually necessarily followed or picked out, but I think yesterday actually marked the end of the first 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency, second term. And that's always a landmark moment for any president to sort of say, right, the change of the guard has happened. We've had sufficient time to start to put into effect our major campaign items, and we should be starting to see some of the results from that. And actually, the election result and the inauguration were both very good for not only the stock market, but also cryptocurrency. But you can very strongly argue that since then, that has not necessarily been the case. And whilst he may be blowing his trumpet about some of his victories, and one of them it talks about in here is sort of migrants crossing the border is not an all-time low, but a significant low in the last sort of 8 years. That's not going to help us. That's not helping us in the crypto market. And we look at this next one, it's the stock market performance. And you can see that actually the past three presidents, Biden, Obama, and Trump first term, were anywhere from 5 to 10% up in their first 100 days. Whereas actually we were as low as almost 20% bear market territory, and we're kind of settling around about 9-10% at the moment. So we are down. And each of these election years, you've got to remember the inauguration is in the year in which previously the, can't think of the word, 4-year cycle is the peak run for each year. So we are starting a bit further back. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to see the gains that we have before. And actually, maybe we're going to see a little bit more to catch up. But this is not a winning position at the moment. And tariffs have been the thing that have been driving that. They're not necessarily gone quiet on the tariffs, but whenever tariffs are mentioned or major policy statements are announced regarding the tariffs, it is moving the market. So actually, there's a lot to be said that whilst we are using TA, you could argue that it's still generally it's fear or greed that's driving the market, and any major news announcement from Trump, is going to cause eruptions. Now, I understand that we might actually get an announcement from the White House today about progression with tariff talks with China and maybe some other countries as well. I couldn't find the news article necessarily to back that up. I just heard it on the news. So we'll just have to wait and see. But the point there is that, if it comes out and we find out in the next sort of 24 hours that progress is being made to actually have a sit-down conversation with China, the markets are going to take that very well. If we start to find out that there are positive tariff discussions with other nations, the market's going to take that very well. If, however, that's not the case, and we're going to find that, Donald Trump's taking his bat and ball home again, and, he's looking to either put further tariffs on China or just not willing to negotiate, I think the market's going to find that very badly. So we can use TA, of course we can, but I think it's very prudent, especially in these nervous times, just always keep an eye on what Donald and China may be doing about those tariffs. Let's just get into some charting, shall we? So Bitcoin, 12-hour candles now. This is the long-term one that we have had for over 2 years. That blue line goes all the way back to January 2023, and it's proven to be very good throughout its time. Yellow boxes, for those that are new, are just areas of liquidation, heat maps or zones where people have put longs and shorts, which are obviously targeted by market makers. And then we've got an overlaid Fibonacci level, which again, people may argue that it's a bit dated. It has served me very well. It actually goes back to March last year's all-time high of 74,000. And then the drop that we had in August of last year and extrapolated across. And we can kind of see just in terms of where we are, zooming in, just so we can see a little bit better. Where was I this time last week? I'll try and find where I was. Tuesday. Okay, so this time last week, this was the candle, 88,000. And that 89 to 500,000 actually did extend out to the right-hand side. And we talked on the call how it had blasted through that, and it had continued to do so. And it was finding itself resting underneath the 618. Well, this is now just reformed as people have decided to go long. And now so we've got some liquidation heat zones there. But the area I want to look at the moment is that fib level, the 1.618. And it's just been a bit of a sticking point initially, and then it's been used as a bit of a support. And the reason I talked about, are we gearing up for, moontime, moonshot, whatever you want to call it, is actually I quite like that kind of pattern, whether it be just resting on a Fibonacci, whether it be resting on an EMA, whether it be just resting on previous price action. I want to see sustained sort of price action, preferably above, but definitely in and around that area where we just know that we're building up some level of support. And obviously, if that had broken down earlier on today, we would have talked about how it was a bit of a topping. But the fact that we then see a nice, we haven't got the vectors on this one, but a nice strong move up, from there, kind of suggests to me that actually we're probably working our way up to that retest of the 100,000. Such a psychological level, but also taking that away from it. Just look, that's where the nearest point for the liquidation heat maps are going to be. So like a magnet, I think we're probably going to be drawn to picking up that area. Maybe we only get as high as 99,000, but that's certainly where I'd be looking. In terms of fib levels, there really isn't anything to look at north of us until we get to the all-time high, which is number 2 on the fib level, the 109,000 level there. So I think maybe we head up here, we have some sort of pullback, because we will need a pullback, and I'll show you when we get EMAs and vector candles and everything else later on. And sort of we can build from that and move up. But that fear that we had back in the beginning of April, 74,000, people talking about the bear market over, really doesn't feel like that's the case at the moment. And if you just have a look, you know, I've got Bitcoin on the monthly time frame here, really zooming out. And obviously that pullback is absolutely nothing. Logarithmic chart, so maybe that hides a little bit there, but it doesn't look anything concerning at all. Matter of fact, it looks very similar to the price action that we had, you know, over the summer of 2024. We've just had a steady move back down, and we're just waiting for that spark that's going to take us back up. Now, obviously last time it was a lead into the election. I don't think that's going to be our spark now. I think really it's probably going to be stabilizing of the stock markets and hopefully some sort of successful resolution to either the Ukrainian war, which I believe the US might have actually started to try and sign that elusive minerals deal that Zelensky and what's his name, Vance, had that little bust up in the White House meeting about, or a resolution of some sort with the tariffs and whatever Trump is actually endgame to try and resolve that. Or I suppose, actually, we'll talk about in a moment, maybe we get some strong rate cuts to support some of that data. But on the monthly time frame, nothing really looks too concerning. And we kind of have to look back on ourselves and think, what were we actually panicking about? Because it kind of does feel a little bit like overkill. And I know I hark on about it quite a lot, but when we throw on a couple of EMAs, blue's 20, red is 50, yellow is 200. Matter of fact, let's just start initially with just the 50, because on the weekly time frame, 50 EMA, that is our baseline for what we're going to know about if we're in a bull or a bear market. And what did we do? We just corrected back to it. It couldn't have been a better correction. And what have we done since then? We've had 4 weeks of just sustained climbing. So a really positive reaction from that 50 EMA. And as I say, when you look back at previous bull markets, the 50 EMA is what, you know, sticks to it. Okay, maybe sometimes it doesn't always get there exactly, but as long as we stay above it, we are in those bull markets. When we break below, bear markets, and we're still above it, we've still got plenty of time in which we can move above from that. Now, what I want to make sure doesn't happen, and I think, you know, right, not that I have any control over it, what I don't want to see, should I say, is yet nice bounce from that, mirroring, if you will, 2021. What I don't want to see, though, is us moving up here, getting close to the all-time high, maybe just peaking it, and then forming that double top. I don't want to see a repeat of 2021. Absolutely not, of course. So that's sort of, from a big picture point of view, is where I'm looking, not to achieve, I'm just monitoring that, just making sure that if we re-challenge that 109, I want to see us break it with volume. I want to see us break it with speed. I don't want to see us just busting in and around of it on lower volume, which makes me think that actually we're probably suckering some people in for a move back down. But that's it. I don't want to talk about any more downer things. That is something that may happen, but it isn't happening just yet. And when we do put on some of these other EMAs, we can actually see, you know what, in terms of where Bitcoin's price is, well away from the 200 EMA, not really a problem for us. That's more of a bear market conversation. But even above the 2021 EMA, if you prefer that one, and strongly pushed through it last week. So again, good to see that strength moving through there. And it's not just us, you know. Oops, I must have scrolled down. Canary in the coal mine. Look at BlackRock, left-hand side of this column. For those that haven't really looked at this before, last week, they spent 1.25 billion on Bitcoin. In the 3 days of this week, they spent $1.25, actually a little bit more, on Bitcoin. They are back. They are buying hard. Some others are selling, but we don't really care about the others. We're solely worried about our little canary in the coal mine, BlackRock. And when we have a look over here on Arkham's dashboard, just have a look in the center of your screen, this IBIT Bitcoin ETF. At one stage, we were down at worrying. They only had 569,000 Bitcoin on the balance, but they bought 20,000 Bitcoin in a matter of weeks. So there does seem to be institutional investors coming back in. Ironically, not smartly. They've been coming back in the last couple of weeks. They'd come in a month ago, could have got it in and around 74,000, but we were still seeing selling back then. But they're coming back in now. And yeah, looking very strong. And actually, when you do go to have a look at BlackRock just themselves, and you have a look down, we take the token history balance. It's difficult to see on the left hand side. They are, so on the 18th of February, they had 587,000 Bitcoin. That was the previous all-time high. This is actually the most they have ever held on their balance sheet. I can't quite get to it, but there you go, 588,000. Give or take a couple of hundred, I accept, but they are back, okay? Institutional investments seem to be back. Confidence in Bitcoin for the now seems to be back. And I think that's echoed in the fear and greed market. We're only in neutral. Last week we were a bit greedy as the strength moved in. But hey, I'll take 50. I'll take 53. I'll take high 40s even, given we were down in the low teens only a month and a half ago. So good to see that moving back in the right direction. I'm not sure where it stands. 51 on CoinMarketCap's fear and greed index. Still not showing an alt season. So remember how the alt season works is out of the top 100, only 16 projects are outperforming Bitcoin. I can't remember over how long a period that's done for, but that's where it currently sits. So yeah, generally for me, things seem to be looking very strong. And there's some other things that we actually need to consider, because last month started the earnings seasons reports of banks and airlines and stuff like that. But now we're starting to get to the tech stock stuff. And so Amazon and Apple earning reports in the next hour or so be very telling to see how they've done, how they're potentially forecasting the future with tariffs as well. Apple will be interesting given what they build over in China. So yeah, I think that will give us a very telling bit of information. And let's just have a look. We'll go on this one. I don't know how either performed today. Apple, kind of treading water today. Not really done too much. Amazon, yeah, Amazon's up slightly, actually. A decent candle there. So yeah, need to wait and see where the rest are going. And then we're going to start to see some of the other firms start to fall in line in terms of their earnings. Now, obviously, for us in crypto and everyone relying on NVIDIA, that's not till the end of May. So we've got a bit of time there. But yeah, I think we'll get some indication tonight. Markets open tomorrow. We'll see how they react from that news. I'm not necessarily going to stay up and listen to the reports or whatever. I'll just wait and see. But I think that will be quite telling. And in a hypersensitive market in which everyone is hanging on to the words of Donald Trump for the fears of tariffs and trying to get old pal boy there to drop the rates, I think they could be very telling from that. Speaking of dropping the rates, well, I mean, we had unemployment coming today, which is actually quite a lot higher than forecast. 224 forecast, or 10% higher, 241 coming in. But the reason I've got this up is next week. So next Wednesday, we've got the FOMC and we've got the federal fund rate. And to be fair, not many people think it's going to drop. And I suppose that is that's something to just hold in the back of your mind. As good as the last 4 weeks have been, if we're not seeing a rate drop, is the market going to get a little bit spooked? And are there going to be some concerns of, well, what exactly do we have to provide right now to start to show that we need to cut the rates? I know Donald is trying to put as much pressure as he can on Powell to drop the rates. He even talks about him removing him and things like that. But the FOMC, the Fed, don't seem to be too worried about what Trump has to say at the moment. They're on their mandate, and their mandate is what they're sticking to. So we'll have to wait and see. You do get some random news things today. 7 hours ago, rate cuts dropped to 60%. I thought, wait a second, that can't be right. It's still 95 to me, but actually, buried deep in this article, which hardly explains it, they're talking about June 18th. So, a month and a half away, we may get a rate drop, 60% chance of a rate drop. And that is even dropping out to 55%. I don't really take any notice of this. I'm only worried about where we are a few days out. They've said we're going to get 2 drops this year. We don't know how big those drops are going to be. But I'm not bothered about what's happening in 5 weeks' time. And I don't really think the market is. I think we're just trying to see anyone try and create some sort of bullish expectation. But I wouldn't be surprised that if this does remain, we know FOMCs are pretty volatile days anyway. but we do see some sort of wobble in the stock markets. And I have a feeling that if that's the case, that's going to extrapolate over and onto the crypto market. We are not decoupled from those by any means. I'll go have a chat about Anita's conversation. So I don't know. I didn't watch the trading pub on Tuesday because I was busy. So I don't know if Siam answered it. But the question is, are we going to get ourselves in a situation where it's sell in May and go away? And for those that aren't really aware of what that is, it's just a traditional expectation, maybe a bit too strong a term. But within the traditional markets, what you typically do see is that period between May and probably September, maybe end of August, beginning of September, just some stagnation or falling away within the stock markets. And that can be for a number of reasons, of whether investors are taking their holidays on their fancy yachts in the Mediterranean or whatever, or it's actually the brokers themselves are on holiday. And so you potentially see some sort of run up into May, some selling happening, or effectively a correction within the stock market, and then that picking back up into September. And then you have things like the Halloween rally or the Santa rally and stuff like that, and it kind of goes on. And in the last 100 years, I can't say it happens every year, but it does seem to happen more often than not. And the question is it going to happen this time? Let's just have a look at where we are. I need to get another clean one. What am I looking for? Sorry. Whilst I'm looking, unfortunately, the reality is I don't know. But you can kind of see here, look, last year, sort of April, we had this dip during May. But actually, to be fair to it, rallied through into July, pullback. Didn't really see much there. We did see it this summer in 2022 fall away. I suppose we saw, that's March there. We didn't really see too much in 2023. So the last couple of years, we actually haven't seen that much of it happen. I don't know if the Nasdaq's any different. I don't particularly think so. I suppose actually last year with the Nasdaq, we did see sort of July down to October fall away. Is that last year? That's 2023, apologies. And again, July to the end of August, it fall away before recovering. So, okay, maybe there we have seen it again, 2022. Run up into, it doesn't seem to be selling May, it seems to be selling July actually, fall away and then recover. I think we've got to be honest with ourselves. We don't know if it's going to happen. For me, the reality of it is going to be if I see an opportunity to make a quick exit and re-entry, I'm going to take it. But generally, in the long term of in the medium term of where we think we're going, all of them have been recovered previously. The stock market has never recovered a drop because in its life, all it's ever done is go up. That's the Nasdaq. Yeah. So it's always recovered any drop it's ever faced. And this will not be any different. Of course it won't. Neither will Bitcoin. And given what year we're in, given where we think the cycle is currently going, I would just have to sit on my hands like I'm doing at the moment. Some of my alts are significantly underwater, 25, 30% down. I am having to sit on my hands on those, and I'll just continue to do so. But we will monitor it through this month. We'll see what's happening with volume. We'll see if there's any evidence. It's the 1st of May today, so it's kind of hard to suggest that we know right now. But it's a good idea to just keep monitoring it throughout this month and see where it goes. A couple of other questions before we get into just some final bit of chatting. Where were they? Discord. So John Hayden, he originally put, I'd like to know if there are any further update on the UK on and off ramps, please, if possible. I don't think there necessarily are. I haven't had to off ramp in a while. I did on ramp earlier this year, and I went the traditional route for me anyway. Bank to Swissborg to Kraken, off I went. Which I actually did have a little bit of an issue in the sense of it'd been so long since I'd done it. I'd have to have another conversation with the fraud team. I explained the circumstances. And they let me move 5 figures worth. No problem. I'm with Barclays. I know a lot of people have different experiences with different banks. I haven't seen that that's easing up. I know there's, news and things happening in the United States, which are making it a little bit easier. And choke point 2.0 is starting to come apart. But right now in the UK, I don't see any of that legislation or narrative really shifting from where it was previously. In terms of off ramps, I haven't done it in so long. I don't really know. There are some exchanges that do direct off ramps back to your bank. If you've had those exchanges for long enough, like Kraken, then they're probably okay. If you need to reset it up now, and how they've had to deal with, is it MiCA? I don't think it is. I think that's the EU version. Whatever the FCA validation route is, you may have a problem with doing it. What I would suggest, and actually it's a nice little reminder potentially for myself, is maybe just try and off ramp something, just see what it's like. You're not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Like, let's just say you want to get out, market's going to go. If you can't, for whatever reason, you can always just sit in stables until you work out how you have to get out. The worst thing is trying to get money in when the market's moving and you get held up or whatever. So on ramp now is definitely the priority, but I think it's worthwhile having perhaps another look at off ramps. And I probably want to get another backup just in case. I have CoinPass, or it's O and A now, but it's CoinPass effectively. And I have the Swissborg route. So they're my two, but I might try and get a third just in case. Neither of those two have ever had any problems, and I've off-ramped, well, certainly 5 figures. I don't think I've tried to off-ramp 6 figures in any one particular go, and it's worked out okay. And then the final question from Harvinder, and I did talk about this last week, but I will reiterate it. He's put, you probably will cover this, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the subnet strategy. Are you doing it? If so, what's your strategy? So just to reiterate what I said last week, and look, so for those who aren't aware, the subnet that we're talking about is taking up a lot of discussion in Discord at the moment, which I'll touch on in a moment, is effectively just utilizing the subnets within the BitTensor ecosystem and their alpha tokens, and just trying to maximize, the movement of alpha tokens versus your tau to increase the tau that you will have at the end of the day. I am not touching it. I think I spoke quite heavily on it last week as to the reasons why, but just to summarize, I find it incredibly complicated. I think I am very crypto savvy. I think I understand how crypto works quite well. I can sort of like just glimpse over things and kind of get a feel for where that is. And I just don't get it. I really struggle to understand how it's sustainable as a strategy or as a way to sort of move funds around, particularly if you're very time scarce, which I have been in the past. I'm obviously freed up a bit more time now, so I'm not training as much. But with new subnets coming on almost daily, with how the emissions are working, having to balance that with how that's going against tau, and what the price of tau is doing, having to deal with low liquidity, slippage, everything else within there. I just personally think that is an incredibly risky strategy. And for those of you that were around in 2021, 2022, with the exception of Ohm and Wonderland, I didn't touch any other rebasing DAO because I just had exactly the same thought process on them. And I think a lot of people would agree that it just didn't work out well for us. The best intentions that were there, I absolutely understand. And if you're willing to take the risk, potentially you've got an opportunity to make some gains. But I wouldn't be putting in I would hesitate to put in even more than 5% of my portfolio, because I just don't think the gains are going to be there. It sounds great. I understand it, the potential for what it is, but we're not seeing that at the moment from what I can understand in Discord. And this is completely untested. And you'll just have to be so on top of it. You're going to have to be on top of the tracking, just so you know where you personally stand. I'm not talking from a tax point of view. Remember, you've converted your tau into all of these different alpha tokens. You need to understand what your original tau amount was, how much up or down you are each time you decide to rebalance your portfolio. So when you walk away, you're like, okay, I've got more tau, or I haven't got more tau. And then you got to convert that against, well, when I started this, tau was only at $160. Now tau's at $10,000 and I'm 45 tau down. So the risk to reward is just not there. Not for me anyway. I did because I've not been on Discord for a week, so apologies for that. I got back onto Discord yesterday trying to read through everything, and I ummed and ahed about putting 1 tau in just so I could have some skin in the game to really understand what the whole subnet debacle was. And I'm not trying to badmouth, and last week I talked about, I'm not badmouthing the strategy. You want to go for it, go for it. Just go for understanding the risks and just make sure you're not too overexposed. And I'm sure some of you in the group are going to hit it big, and well done to you for doing it. But I was going to put some skin in the game so I could at least learn about it, and then I could contribute to conversations that were being had. But to be honest with you, in the 5-6 days worth of messages, everything changed so quickly I couldn't keep up with it. And I just thought, actually, I'm going to just stand to one side. I think Lewis will probably tomorrow launch a subnet dedicated only chat, try and not clog up some of the other stuff so that people can talk about it. And there's even talks about just having a read only section in which Simon just posts what it is that he's doing. So again, for those who just want to follow it and they not get lost anywhere, they can just see where those are currently landing. But I'm not sure I'm there. If I was going to do it, I'd feel more comfortable doing the sort of like buying, holding for a longer term. But you kind of got to ask yourself in the grand scheme of crypto, what staking asset with a decent APY has anyone ever held onto for 3 years, 4 years plus without it, going under or what have you? None really that I can think of. You could argue Ethereum for a time, but even Polkadot, I laugh at that because obviously everyone knows where I was with Polkadot. So that's it. That's where I am. I'm going to try and get my head around it, but I'm not really interested in following it. And maybe that'll change. Maybe when we've got a bit more maturity within that, we got a bit more liquidity within that, I can start to get involved. But again, one of my other bigger worries is, we are little fish swimming in a small pond with one very big fish anyway. So, when they decide to leave, are they just going to suck up all the water? I think I've taken that analogy too far, but you understand what I mean. So what I would say is take profit. Just take the profit. It may seem like the most alien thing to do, and I use this story all the time, but back in the rebasing DAO time days, I sold 2 times when it was $9,000 each every week. And people thought I was an idiot for doing it, but I sold it back to cash, put it in my bank, and went, you know what? Magic internet money is just giving me 20 grand this week. I'm actually going to just take it all out. And that massively helped when the market dropped because I had already taken profit. And as everyone thought the rebasing DAO was the absolute gift that kept on giving. So, don't be under any illusion that we didn't. I'm not saying that one is like the other in terms of BitTensor and Wonderland, but we both thought at the time that they were the nuts, and obviously rebasing DAOs did not turn out to be that way. Anyway, I'm trying to stay away from the negativity. That's just my opinion. I'll leave it at that. Hopefully I've not upset our overlords too much and I'll get too much for telling off. We'll find out next week if I'm back. Right, anything else on here? How'd the marathon go? Yeah, I spoke about it at the beginning. Hot, hard, not the time I wanted. 442. I'm going through a redemption arc next year and we'll see what we can get. Probably do a bit more marathons between there, but I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it was tough. If anyone's really interested, I'll send you a message afterwards. But John's put he's found Lloyd's personal banking good for on-ramp. So yeah, I'm with Lloyd's as well. I've not had to use them because Barclays have done well for me. But it is funny because some people will say to you, Lloyd's are horrendous, or Barclays are horrendous, or HSBC is great, or Santander, whatever. It's just different people seem to have different experience, which is annoying because there's no consistency there with what it was. But it is what it is. And thanks, Cliff. Yeah. Okay, let's just do some more in-depth charting, and then I think we'll probably just knock it on the head. Stuart's also good for Lloyd's. Maybe Lloyd's is the way. So Bitcoin daily time frame at the moment, and just looking at this chart here, I think you can kind of get a feel for when I'm talking that we're potentially a little bit overextended. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but we have, not only got through the 10, the 20, the 200, and the 50. We're now actually north of those and powering north. And so I would not be surprised at all for a correction, and a healthy correction at that. And when I'm looking at that correction, what do we do? We'll take a fib. We'll see what we can find. And so I'll do wick to wick, and then I'll do body to body, because I think that's only fair. And wick to wick, this actually looks pretty good. And maybe we've got a bit more time before a correction, because what we've actually seen here is the bottom at 74,000. We've blown through, 382, the 50% line, and then we hit the 618, and we didn't get rejected from it. All we did was actually just build some support and resistance in and around there. We allowed the 10 EMA, remember we're on the daily here, to catch up. And then today we've shot through it. It's not closed, it's not finished at the moment. It was green earlier on today. It's actually gone back to just being a normal candle. But it'll be interesting to see how that one there closes. And it just ate through this vector candle that was at, it started off at 96.5. And then it ends at 98.5. So we've still got a bit of room to go. But nice to see where that is. But just taking that fib away, and I just think, look, there's so much movement here. A pullback is just, for me, I would expect it. Now, certainly to the 20, maybe to the 50, and maybe even a spike down to take out this vector zone here and also coincide with the 200 EMA. Any move like that, I think it would be news orientated, and I think it would be a sharp move back down, which would probably be quickly brought back up, because it does seem to be some very positive sentiment in the market at the moment. And so there's a potential opportunity, if we did fall any of those levels, that's where I'd be looking. So I don't have a Bitcoin long open at the moment, unfortunately. It never hits at like 78,000 or whatever I set it at. But when I look at, sort of, and I appreciate we could keep on going north. I can only base it on the candle at the moment, but wick to wick, looking at that 50% recovery level, it's at 85,000. What else at 85,000? Oops, I didn't want to do that. What else is at 85,000 when we get rid of that? Well, it's right smack bang at the recovery of these vector zones. It's also in and around that 200 EMA, and it's back at almost the neckline, or the waistline, should I say, of this double bottom that formed on the bigger picture. That double bottom we talked about, it was on the 3-day time frame. Albeit a little bit early. So there's definitely some confluence there that would suggest if we can't hold our current position, that's where I'd be looking to go. Now, I actually think what will probably end up happening, as I say, is probably next day or two, take that vector zone there, have a battle with 100K, have some sort of correction back down, and then start to work our way back up. That's what I'd be looking at. I don't think, oops, let's get rid of that again. Looking on the lower time frames, I don't really think there's anything saying anything different there. Again, the 200 and the 800 on the 4 hour is actually only down as low as 87,000, which when you put that on the daily, that's kind of where the 50 EMA is. So there's an argument to be said that maybe it's only as low as 50,000, but I think we might wick through it, close on the daily back at that level. But that's, again, certainly where I would be looking there. And actually on this 4 hour, it's not looking too bad, because we did actually retest it yesterday. The market had a bit of a correction on opening, didn't it? But we've come back. So gives us some sort of suggestion that actually maybe there is still some gas in it, or petrol in the UK, for that move up to 6 figures before coming back down. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Let's go and talk about Tau. Again, these are the lines we've had drawn for some time. That inverse head and shoulders played out beautifully for anyone that did play it. I did not. But let's get rid of it. We had this level of not concern, but this sort of area of, I don't know why I drew the line, but 355 was kind of the line that was drawn there. And like a magnet, we did go through it. And again, much like what I said with Bitcoin, this is looking quite strong. Okay. And I do have, it's not necessarily a concern, but I would say at the moment is we've shot up, and we're just starting to lose a bit of steam in and around that 200 EMA, which, last time we tried this, that's what happened again. Now, I'm not saying it's going to cause a major correction. Potentially, we could see a pullback, as we haven't managed to break through it. We have, however, managed to climb and stay above that line there. But for me, maybe a correction down to sort of that 300 level, picking up that 50 EMA, is still something on the cards. And again, when you draw the fibs and look at them out there, wick to top, I mean, it's a little bit lower. You've got the 382 suggesting that's coming in there. I suppose let's just see if they're body to body. Nothing quite like just changing the goalpost to just make it fit your narrative. Still going to be sort of 382 in around that 50 level there. But I see sort of a correction down to the 50 EMA. Maybe it spikes down to the bottom of the clouds and we hit that 382 level. in terms of sort of how we're doing on this major correction recovery, we went down, we're in here, and at the moment it's that 50% level. The 0.5 is what we're battling against. And I'm not selling at the moment. Matter of fact, the vast majority of my TAU is staked. But if we were to roll over from this, there's a good opportunity to maybe just sort of get out there and find a little bit of a 10-15% move, not be too greedy with it, and just sort of get back in. And again, that 0.5 level, a logical level for it to turn around. So there's some confidence there. But not taking anything away from BitTensor, I just think it's just running out of steam because it's had such a strong move. And this has had a stronger move than most other tokens in the market, with the exception of a few memes, which we'll talk about in a moment. Ethereum, yeah. My Siri just woke up on my phone. So there is a potential for a double bottom, W formation here on Ethereum. We've had these drops come back down. We formed it, that second side of that W with a vector candle there through some of the EMAs on the daily. But look what we've run into, 50 EMA, and Ethereum just hasn't performed well. There's a lot of tokens that have. Ethereum is definitely not one of them. So I think it's got a bit of work to do. I think this will be completely led by the market. But we haven't managed to break through it yet. And even if we do, we've got some vector zones that may attract us. But, 2,500 is going to be a big issue for us. Not just, excuse me, I need some water. Not just in terms of the EMAs, but we've also got previous price resistance there. I lost my train of thought with that. But what I would like to see then is, if we can't get through this 50 EMA, is build that consolidation point. This is very similar to Bitcoin, building its consolidation. Except for Bitcoin was above the 50 EMA and then break through. Its move today to try and break through has actually been held back by the 50 EMA. And I think it was Bijan that put in chat that the last time that Bitcoin was at 97,000, I think Ethereum was at something ridiculous like 3,000. It is just struggling. And when you look at it against, where is, ETH Bitcoin, it's just not looking like it's turning around. That double bottom doesn't seem to have played out on this chart at the moment. So we need to see that strong move. And for me, that strong move is an actual break of the 50 EMA. Anything before that, and I'm not buying it from Ethereum. You could argue it hasn't touched the 50 EMA in a while, so a recovery to that probably on the cards, but it'd need to break it. Things like NEAR, looking very similar to Ethereum, if I'm honest with you, on the daily. Let's just get rid of that because I don't think we need it. Struggling in around the 50 EMA. That's just what that is looking like. Link is another one that I'm in. Okay, a little bit better, as in it's found support above it and it's consolidating. I'll take that, but I want to see it break 1620 and hold above that level before I get really excited. And I do want to rebalance, but I'm just holding this for now. I don't have that much compared to the rest of the pot, so I'm just going to hold it and try and just get a better position. I'm just trying to see where would I best draw this fib. Let's just do it from this one, top to bottom. Look, okay, there you go, perfect. 382 is what's holding it at the moment. So it kind of makes sense as to why it's struggling there. Ondo, similar kind of thing. Don't know what these boxes were, so we'll delete them. Having a look at where this has gone. Again, 382, and now just being held on the 236. So we can see those battlegrounds. That's why I love fibs. They just play out very nicely. Casper, I think some people are backing Casper. This one, again, strong move up to the 0.5, rejected back down to the 50 EMA. So this is what I would expect to see from TAU, that kind of price action. So got up to the 200 EMA, which also was the 0.5 Fibonacci, had a pullback, not the end of the world pullback, found support on the 50 EMA. It's actually now managed to recover the 382 fib and hopefully make another run up for that 200 EMA on the day. So again, that's what I like. W formation, rise one, consolidate and pullback, make its move for rise two. That's what we want to see. Big battleground though has to be the 618, 12 cents. That's where I am with that one. Ohm, we've talked about, just dying. Virtue's one that I tell you what, I know a lot of us seem to get in on it far too late. I think I was at $3.70 or something. Seemed like a bargain at the time. Went all the way down to 50 cents. But look at it. It is almost 3x'd in the last month. So looking very strong there. 618 holding it back. We would expect a pullback from this one. Maybe AI agents are just taking a little bit of a front runner at the moment in terms of where they're going, but it's looking strong. I don't know whether it's worth a play if it does give you a pullback potentially. Treat it as a meme coin play potentially. And speaking of meme coins, Fartcoin has just defied everybody and said, you know what, hold my beer, I'm off. 20 cents to $1.20 in the matter of 2 months, when the rest of the market's had some sort of correction between now and then. But what I like about Fartcoin is actually it has been making corrections on the way and still being able to find that strength and that momentum there. So, up, finally breaks 50 MA, comes back, corrects off it, up, using the 10 as just a crutch on the way up, finally 20 as support, and then just carrying it. Just nice, healthy price action from there. A couple of others. Trump had a big pump. I don't even know why it had a pump at the end of last month, but it did. But starting to correct back down. Is it the sign of things to come? I don't think so. I don't think this recovers as well as $80. This will never see $80 in my opinion. SPX. So I'm back in SPX after selling it and getting back in. Took a bit of profit and then just bought back in from it. But again, a bit choppier. At least it's above the 50 EMA, but it's just, all of these are just really holding it back. And if I did do a 0.5 to 382, just really kind of been squeezed at the moment. Right on it with a pretty ugly high test candle at the moment on the daily. Not what you want to see right now, but this is my version of trading alpha. It's a meme coin, it's a bit of a gamble. We'll see what happens. Melania, I used to enjoy shorting it, but the fees are just too much. It's not worth it, but that's where it's going. And then I wanted to have this conversation, not that one. This conversation, which is Tau BTC. So, this looks a bit complicated, and I'll try and explain it. But obviously, I hold quite a bit of BTC because when I started selling in January, I just started buying BTC instead of holding the cash. And you could argue that was a good or a bad move, but in terms of BTC dominance, there's really no token, maybe Fartcoin, that has really lost out over that period of time. And so it just seemed like a good hedge to just put money into whilst I wanted to see what the market was doing. And so, at some stage I will rebalance that and go back into alts when I see where it's at. And so I've just done this for my sort of sanity of like the amount of times I sold. It wasn't just selling BitTensor, it was selling any altcoin, and when I bought the Bitcoin from it. So it's not 100% accurate because there were, obviously I was selling one token to buy another. So it doesn't necessarily mean that as long as I buy Bitcoin now, buy Tau now, then I'm okay because the Tau BTC price is down from them, because it not quite works out. It's just a good frame of reference for me to have a look at. But, buying through February and March generally up here, and then BitTensor's had a fall. Now it's had a very strong recovery. And so some of the buys that I made when I just decided to put cash into the market because we were at all-time lows, well, actually BitTensor's strongly outperformed Bitcoin in the last month. So I'd be down on those, but there's still 3 buys here. And this one was my largest buy, this first one, in which actually price action is above BitTensor. And I think that's the beauty right now, because I look at my portfolio and I think, wow, I don't have that much BitTensor compared to what I used to have. And it's because it's in Bitcoin. And if I were to buy it, and I did the maths on took my socks off and did it on my fingers and toes, I would be nicely up in terms of BitTensor, even if we did the staking. And so, yes, I see Bitcoin dominance is still climbing, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's an alt season, but at the same time, I've got to be realistic as to, am I potentially missing on some gains here to get in? So what I'm actually looking at is the Tau BTC chart, and for some form of a pullback to get back in. Now, of course, that could just be, the price could still go up in dollar value of BitTensor as long as Bitcoin's price goes up by a greater percentage. That would create a pullback on this. Or if they both fall, but Bitcoin doesn't fall as hard, that would create a pullback on this chart. So that's what I'm looking at to get back in. I think once I see that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be big, I'm going to start to reallocate some of my Bitcoin into BitTensor and just start to take that move from there. It's not going to be everything, but it will be a decent proportion, just depending on how strong that pullback is. But I think it's probably about time to have a look at that. I think BitTensor is doing quite well right now, but I think that's my main play at the moment. And the reason behind that is when you actually have a look at sort of how my holding currently sits. So SPX 5% is probably a decent amount. It started out as 0.5 my portfolio back when I first bought it, and that's where it sits now. Link and Ondo 7%, near 10, about 2% in money on the side, and then Bitcoin and Tau, they're fairly evenly matched. I actually had the courage, by the way, to update my Delta portfolio. It was painful, but I'd done it. So this is accurate today. And I just think actually, if I can just shave off half of this at the moment, put that back into BitTensor, I think the highest my BitTensor portfolio has ever been is about 50% of the overall portfolio. I'm going to do well in an uplift in BitTensor there, which again, putting it on route, just going to bring in more staking rewards for however long I decide to hold it for. Business side of things, keep on buying. I actually bought a lot extra from the business. Not sure if I could do that, but I did it anyway. It's a conversation to have with an accountant for an apology later on. Last month when we were down at the lows and the VIX was very high. So that's just looking strong, but as we know, that's not getting touched. It's just going to stay as BTC. And my own little mini micro strategy event. Don't think any questions have been asked or updated, which is fine. We're getting closer now. Let's just see if there's anything else here. Thanks for that. John's put, reason for the pump. Trump offered the top 200 or so holders dinner with him. Really? Okay, interesting. Yeah, well, I'm sure that would have caused a bit of a pump there. And hey, why not? Wonder when the cutoff was. And then once you submit your wallet address, did everyone just sell? Probably. But yeah, I think that's probably going to be it. I think I bored you for enough tonight. Next week onwards, we're back. It is Tuesday nights, 8 o'clock. We'll just get back into the swing of things. Not sure when Simon's getting back to normality and back to this country and everything else. I think it's like mid-May before things calm down for him. So hopefully he won't take the Tuesday slots and we'll just stick with those. As I say, I appreciate I'm not as vocal on Discord at the moment. It's just because I'm a bit lost with all the subnet conversations. I try and get my head into it all and help people where I can. So I should go to full screen. But if you have any questions, and even if you do have some questions about subnets, if you direct it to me, I will try and answer it as best I can. I may not be the most swept up. There's some people in Discord that know a far lot about it more than me, and don't be afraid to tag them in. I'm sure they appreciate me saying that. But we'll go from there. Anything else I need to mention? The cuddle. So we've got a meetup, not this weekend, next weekend. So I am going to be talking in it. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but most importantly, I'm back on the booze. We're not running anymore. Well, not for a bit. So look forward to having a bit of a knees up and a good catch up with everyone. And just hearing stories of how we all survived this crypto winter or spring or whatever we want to call it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. Any questions, as usual, hit me up and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.